Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Defining Artificial Intelligence Systems in Medical Device Regulations. It will address the new guideline published by the European Commission regarding the definition of an artificial intelligence system in accordance with the Artificial Intelligence Act, with a focus on the impact of medical devices covered by the Medical Device Regulation. First of all, my name is Eleonora Ardissono. I have been working in TUVitalia, the Italian subsidiary of TUSud Group, since 2017 as customer service, firstly in consumer and commercial product, and then in medical health services. So with more than 8 years of experience in customer service and contractual management. I will take a few minutes to introduce you the TUSud world. TUSud, with more than 30,000 employees, distributed in more than 1,000 locations worldwide, with an experience of 150 years in testing, inspection, and certification market, issuing more than 6,000 certificates, is a one-stop solution provider, completely impartial and independent. Our logo is universally recognized as a symbol of safety, security, and sustainability. We guarantee global market coverage thanks to our presence in more than 50 countries. We provide a wide range of services in 5 key industry sectors, such as testing and product certification, such as auditing and system certification. For example, we audit and certify management systems for all industries, ensuring your value chain complies with requirements for quality, performance, IT security, according to international, national, and relevant standards. Inspection, advisory, and training. For example, we support the performance of people and organizations through a wide spectrum of training and knowledge management around issues of quality, safety, from environmental protection to regulatory requirements and process optimization, and verification and validation. With more than 1,500 medical device experts across 20 countries, we are the #1 leader in medical device certification market. TUSud is fully recognized for all the medical device codes by the European Union. You could easily find our notification in Tonando with notifying number 0123 and also notifying number 2443. We provide services for all the category of medical devices. In particular, we provide services, certification according to in vitro diagnostic, medical device regulation, ISO 13485, UKCA, medical device single audit program, and so on. We provide also internationally accredited independent product testing services in accordance with international standards through a global network of testing laboratories. We have 8 centers of excellence in testing, as shown in the map. For instance, in this location, we provide testing services like electrical safety testing, MC testing, environmental transportation testing, functional safety, MRI safety testing, NRTL certification, biocompatibility testing, so chemical, so microbiological, reprocessing, toxicological risk assessment, cybersecurity. Our transparent communication and customer-centric approach supports efficient regulatory compliance and global market access for your innovative products. We are recognized for our commitment to quality and building long-term relationship of trust. TÜV is a global leader in medical device certification, auditing and verification testing services. Thanking you all, I will now pass the floor to the speaker of today's webinar, Mrs. Elisa. I leave you the stage.
Thank you, Eleonora, for this introduction, and thank you all for participating in this webinar, and welcome. Let me briefly introduce myself. I am Elisa Veronese. I've been working in TÜV since 2023. I serve as a lead auditor for active medical devices under various schemes such as MDD, MDR, MDSAP, ISO 13485, and ISO 9001, as well as a technical documentation assessor. My academic background is in biomedical engineering, and before joining TÜV, I spent 9 years in the medical device industry working in both R&D and quality. All right, we're ready to dive into the webinar. Today's agenda can be divided into 3 main parts. An introduction explaining the role of the guidelines. Then we'll see how an AI system is defined by the AI Act itself. And finally, the core of the webinar, that is to say the guideline on the definition of an AI system and its 7 key elements, with some examples taken from the world of the medical devices. So let's start from the first point. Let's try to understand why guidelines are published in general and why this particular guideline has been issued. So to do that, we need to refer to a few articles of the AI Act, specifically Article 3, 96, and 1013. But don't worry, I promise it will be just these 3. So in this introductory section, these 3 articles will serve as our reference points, 3, 96, and 1013. Let's start by saying that, as explained by the guideline itself, the AI Act does not apply to all systems, but only to those that meet the definition of an AI system. It is therefore essential to fully understand the definition of an AI system, which is provided in Article 3 of the AI Act, dedicated to definitions. Keep in mind that Article 3, along with Articles 1, 2, and 4, is part of Chapter 1. As established by Article 113, which sets the applicability dates of the AI Act, the Act becomes mandatory from August 2026, but with some exceptions. For example, the entire Chapter 1 is applicable from February 2025. Therefore, Article 3, which contains the definition and is part of Chapter 1, is mandatory from February 2025. That is the first key point to note. So let's move to Article 96, which states that the Commission is committed to publishing guidelines to support the practical implementation of the AI Act. In particular, if we look at point F, Article 96 clearly states that the Commission shall develop guidelines on the practical implementation of this regulation, and in particular on the application of the definition of an AI system. This is the further reason why the guideline we are addressing today was published in 2025. And as specified in the guideline itself, which in turn refers directly to Article 96.f, in producing these guidelines, the Commission aims to assist providers and other relevant persons in determining whether a system constitutes an AI system within the meaning of the AI Act, thus facilitating the effective application of the Act. And please remember point 7, these are indeed guidelines. They are not legally binding. All right, let's move to the second point of our agenda, which is the definition of an AI system according to the AI Act. Here you can read it, and better, let's read it together. So, an AI system means a machine-based system that is designed to operate with a varied level of autonomy and that may exhibit adaptiveness after deployment, and that for explicit or implicit objectives infers from the input it receives how to generate outputs such as prediction, content, recommendation, or decisions that can influence physical or virtual environments. You will have noticed that while reading the definition, I emphasized certain words, and those will be the key concepts explained throughout the guideline. But before going through these key concepts, the guideline offers an important caveat. Given the wide variety of existing AI systems, it is not possible to provide an exhaustive list of all potential AI systems. The fact that it was not feasible to create a rigid mechanical definition capable of producing a clear-cut black or white result about whether a system qualifies as an AI system had already been anticipated in Recital 12 of the AI Act. That recital explains that the notion of an AI system must remain sufficiently flexible to keep pace with the rapid technological development in the field of artificial intelligence. Today, we are often citing the Recital 12 of the AI Act, which is especially important because it clarifies the definition of an artificial intelligence system and explains key characteristics that distinguish AI systems from simpler traditional software. Okay, let's return to the definition and to the terms I emphasized during the reading. These are the 7 key elements, each of which is examined in detail by the guideline. So to get to the core purpose of the guideline, it aims to unpack and clarify the meaning of these 7 key elements in order to help providers interpret the definition of an AI system and determine whether their own system qualifies as such, and therefore whether the requirement of the AI Act apply to it. It is important to emphasize that this definition aligns with that provided by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and therefore its significance extends well beyond the European borders, allowing it to be regarded as broadly recognized at international level. And here we are, third point of our agenda. Let's find out the concepts behind these key elements defined by the guideline we are discussing today. One final introductory clarification stated in the guideline. It is emphasized that the definition of an AI system adopts a life cycle-based perspective, covering 2 main phases, which are the pre-deployment or building phase and the post-deployment or use phase of the system. This is important because not all of the 7 key elements may be present throughout the entire life cycle of an AI system. However, that does not preclude the system from being considered an AI system. Now, let's finally begin examining the 7 key elements, which are machine-based system, autonomy, adaptiveness, the objectives of an AI system, the concept of inference, the outputs, which can be prediction, content, recommendation, or decision, and the interaction with the physical or virtual environment. We will look at how the guideline addresses each of these 7 elements and explain them by highlighting the core concepts. Let's start with the first one. An AI system is a machine-based system. The term machine-based highlights that AI systems are created and operate using machines. Here, machine refers to both the hardware and the software that enable the functioning of an AI system. All AI systems are inherently machine-based, as they rely on machines to perform essential tasks, such as model training, data processing, predictive analysis, automated decision-making. This notion of machine-based in the definition of an AI system emphasizes that such systems must be computationally driven and based on machine operation. Now, let's move to the second key element. An AI system is designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy. This autonomy is closely connected to the system capability to infer, another of the 7 key elements. We will see it later. Capable of inferring outputs qualifies some degree of independence of capability to function without human intervention. This explicitly excludes systems that operate with a full manual human involvement. It is important to note that this degree of autonomy can, in some cases, result in an AI system operating entirely without human intervention in specific use contexts. This has implications for the level of human oversight required, implications that must be addressed using a risk-based approach. For this reason, a provider must carefully consider the system's level of autonomy when implementing human oversight measures or risk mitigation strategies. Third key element, an AI system may exhibit adaptiveness after deployment. What's the difference between autonomy and adaptiveness? These are 2 distinct concepts. Recital 12, again Recital 12, explains that adaptiveness refers to a system's self-learning capabilities, meaning it can change its behavior and the results it provides even when given the same inputs. Let's go back to the distinction between autonomy and adaptiveness. Autonomy, which was the second key element we had just discussed in the previous slide, in the context of the AI Act, refers to a system ability to operate with some degree of independence from human involvement. This means the system can make decisions or perform actions without needing a person to control every step. Autonomy is a required feature for a system to be considered an AI system under the AI Act. As explained in the previous slide, if a system always requires full manual human control, it is not considered autonomous and therefore does not fall under the AI Act's definition of an AI system. Adaptiveness, on the other hand, refers to the system ability to learn and change its behavior after deployment. An adaptive AI system can improve or modify how it functions based on new data or user interaction while in use. However, adaptiveness is not required for a system to be considered an AI system under the AI Act. The definition says an AI system may exhibit adaptiveness, meaning it is optional, not required. For example, a chatbot that improves its responses over time by learning from user interaction is adaptive. But if it does not learn after deployment and always gives the same responses, it is not adaptive, but it can still be considered an AI system as long as it is autonomous. What about examples of medical devices incorporating AI? According to what we have just said, to be covered by the definition of AI system, they must have some degree of autonomy, and they might exhibit adaptiveness capabilities. Let's make some examples. We can have a medical device with partial autonomy and adaptiveness. For example, an AI-powered diagnostic software for analyzing radiological images that suggests possible diagnosis and updates itself with new data to optimize performance. It is partially autonomous as long as it provides diagnostic recommendations, but the final decision is made by the physician. It has adaptiveness as long as it improves its performance over time through machine learning, adapting to new clinical data and hospital practices. Or we can have a medical device with partial autonomy and no adaptiveness. For example, an AI-assisted surgical robotic system that performs predefined movement under human supervision. The robot performs some surgical tasks autonomously, for instance, tissue sampling or repetitive movements, but all key steps are supervised and approved by the surgeon. Autonomy is therefore partial. And if the system does not learn from new data or procedures, it only performs action learned during development, but without learning from new cases. Or we can have a medical device with full autonomy, 100% autonomous, and adaptiveness. For example, an autonomous drug delivery system that operates without supervision and adapts to environmental conditions. The device operates completely autonomously, making decisions and acting without any human intervention during the procedure. Moreover, the system has adaptiveness since it can sense changes in the environment, for instance, temperature, pH, presence of biomarkers, and adapts its behavior accordingly. These were just examples to highlight that autonomy is mandatory, adaptiveness is not. Okay, let's move on to the fourth key element, which states that an AI system operates for explicit or implicit objectives. The objectives of an AI system are the internal goals that the system aims to achieve during its operation. They are the missions that drive the system behavior, and they can be explicit or implicit. Explicit objectives are clearly defined and programmed by the developer. For example, maximize the accuracy of responses or minimize response time. These objectives are often formalized in mathematical terms, such as cost function or probability, while implicit objectives are not directly written into the code, but instead emerge from how the system was trained or from its learned behavior. For instance, if an AI system is trained on data that favors certain type of responses, it might implicitly learn to prefer those responses, even if that was not explicitly intended. Let's think about a simple example. Imagine a virtual corporate assistant whose explicit objective is to respond to user queries with high accuracy and minimal errors. However, if the training data favors faster responses, even at the cost of accuracy, the system might implicitly develop the goal of responding as quickly as possible. Now, let's move to the field of medical devices with another possible example. A company manufactures a medical device that uses AI for the early detection of lung nodules. The explicit objectives are those clearly defined and programmed by the developers, such as accurately identify and localize lung nodules in CT images, or optimize the sensitivity and specificity of the diagnosis, or minimize false negatives and false positives. These objectives are encoded into the system through optimization functions and performance metrics. But there might be also implicit objectives, which, as mentioned earlier, are not explicitly stated, but emerge from the system behavior or the training data, such as a possible bias toward diagnosing certain types of nodules that are more common in the training dataset, or an implicit preference for certain images characteristics, for instance, image quality or resolution that may influence diagnostic performance, or the system adaptation to environmental condition or to the specific radiological equipment used, or a tendency to flag even marginal anomalies to avoid missing suspicious cases, something that may derive from historical data analysis. These objectives may emerge from the system's interaction with the clinical environment and the training data without having been formally programmed. It is important to differentiate not only implicit from explicit objectives, but also to understand the difference between objectives and intended purpose. A key clarification is provided, again, in Recital 12, where it is stated that the objectives of an AI system may be different from the intended purpose of an AI system in a specific context. What does that mean? In short, the objectives are what the AI system internally tries to optimize or achieve, while the intended purpose refers to how and where the system is meant to be used as defined by its provider. The intended purpose concerns the context of use, the rules and the condition under which the system is supposed to operate. So the objectives are internal to the system, what it's trying to accomplish, while the intended purpose is external, defined by the provider or developer. Let's look at a couple of examples. The simple one, take again our virtual corporate assistant. Its intended purpose might be to assist the HR department by answering questions about company policies. The system objectives, its internal goals, whether explicit or implicit, could be to respond with high accuracy and few errors. Now let's move to the field of medical devices. Consider an AI-based medical device, such as a radiological diagnostic support tool. The intended purpose, as defined by the manufacturer, might be to assist radiologists in specialized oncology centers by providing second opinions on imaging results, helping speed up the diagnostic process. The intended purpose may also include specific condition of use, such as requiring that only qualified medical personnel operate the device and that images are acquired using standardized protocols to ensure that quality. The system explicit objective might be to accurately and efficiently detect cancerous lesion in MRI scans. This internal goal could be formalized in terms of optimizing sensitivity and specificity while minimizing false positives and false negatives. Additionally, the system might develop implicit objectives based on training data, for instance, performing better on certain types of tumors that are overrepresented in the dataset. So, take-home message. The intended purpose of an AI medical device is the medical use declared by the manufacturer for regulatory compliance, while the objectives of the AI are the specific technical or functional goals of the AI algorithm. These are related but not the same and must be clearly distinguished in documentation and regulatory submission. Okay, now let's move to the fifth key element, which is a crucial one. The capability to infer. In other words, the ability to draw conclusions and determine how to generate outputs. It is important to clarify, as usual, Recital 12 of the AI Act also explains, that this does not refer to capabilities found in traditional software that simply performs fixed operation based on rules explicitly programmed by humans. So what are we talking about? Let's go back to Recital 12, which explains that this capability to infer involves two main processes. The capability of obtaining outputs, such as prediction, content, recommendation, or decision, that can influence the physical or virtual environment, and the capability of deriving models or algorithms from inputs or data. All right, let's stop for a moment and consider these aspects carefully. Earlier, we mentioned that the definition of an AI system adopts a life cycle-based perspective, which includes two main phases. You remember the pre-deployment or building phase and the post-deployment or use phase of the system. In the use phase, the system receives inputs and generates outputs, while in the building phase, the system may also learn or construct models and algorithms from data. In other words, it develops the rules or models it will later use to infer. So we could say that of the two capabilities mentioned in Recital 12, the first is more associated with the use phase, while the second is more connected to the building phase. Let's consider an example. Imagine an AI-powered software designed to help doctors diagnose diseases based on radiological images. In the building phase, the system is trained using thousands of patient images, some of which are linked to confirm diagnosis. During this phase, the system infers models and algorithms from this data. It learns which features in the images are associated with specific conditions. Crucially, the system is not just following pre-written rules from human programmer. Instead, it constructs its own statistical or mathematical model to recognize diseases. Then, in the use phase, when it receives a new patient's image, the system applies the model it previously built to infer whether there are signs of illness and generates an output, such as a diagnosis or a probability score for a certain condition. Why is this inference? Because the system is not just executing fixed instruction, but rather it is reasoning over new data to produce a result. So the capability to infer refers both to the phase where the system learns to recognize patterns from data, the model building, and to the phase where it uses that model to generate outputs, the model application. At this point, the guidelines include a detailed excursus which goes slightly beyond the scope of today's webinar on the various AI techniques that enable inference. In particular, the techniques that may be used to enable inference include machine learning approaches that learn from data how to achieve certain objectives, and logic and knowledge-based approaches that infer from encoded knowledge or symbolic representation of the task to be solved. The first category, the machine learning approaches, includes a large variety of approaches enabling a system to learn, such as supervised learning, unsupervised learning, self-supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Let's go briefly through them. In the case of supervised learning, the AI system learns from annotations, which are the labeled data, used to link the input data with the correct output. In the case of unsupervised learning, the AI system learns from data that has not been labeled, and the model is trained on data without any predefined labels or outputs. Then the self-supervised learning is a subcategory of unsupervised learning, whereby the AI system learns from unlabeled data in a supervised fashion, using the data itself to create its own labels or objectives. Then AI system based on reinforcement learning learn from data collected from their own experience through a reward function. Unlike AI systems that learn from labeled data, the supervised learning, or that learn from patterns, the unsupervised learning, AI systems based on reinforcement learning learn from experience. The system is not given explicit labels, but instead learns by trial and error, refining its strategy based on the feedbacks it gets from the environment. And then deep learning is a subset of machine learning that uses layered architectures, neural networks, for representation learning. AI system based on deep learning can automatically learn features from raw data. Okay, that said, it is important to note that in many cases, hybrid approaches are used, combining expert knowledge with machine learning to create systems that are more robust, explainable, and adaptive. Still within the discussion of the fifth key point, the capability to infer, the guideline opens another parenthesis to further clarify what is meant by inference. As we have already seen in the previous slides, Recital 12 stresses that an AI system should not be confused with simpler traditional software systems that merely execute fixed pre-programmed rules. The guideline explains that there are certain systems that, despite having some inference capabilities, may nevertheless fall outside of the scope of the AI system definition because of their limited capacity to analyze patterns and adjust autonomously their output. At this point, several practical examples are given of systems that are excluded. For instance, mathematical optimization systems that improve or accelerate traditional mathematical methods, for instance, linear regression or optimization algorithms. They enhance computational efficiency, but not in an intelligent or autonomous way. An example would be a software that speeds up physical simulation using machine learning to estimate parameters. Think about a cardiac ablation device that uses mathematical models to optimize treatment parameters, such as the electrode size, the voltage, the treatment duration, in order to maximize effectiveness and minimize harm to surrounding tissue. These systems are based on mathematical optimization algorithms, not on machine learning or neural networks. Then the other example is basic data processing systems. These allow fixed predefined instruction without learning or reasoning, such as databases, spreadsheet without AI functions. These systems do not generate intelligent recommendations or decisions. For instance, a software tool that analyzes service data from using statistical methods, but without learning or modeling capabilities. Think about a basic clinical data management system, such as a hospital software that collects, stores, and generates reports on patient vital signs. This system processes and organizes data, but do not learn or make autonomous inferences. Then, system based on classical heuristics. These use rule of thumb and trial and error strategies for problem solving without learning from data. An example would be a chess program that uses classical algorithms but does not adapt or improve based on experience. To think about a more medical device example, we can have a medical device for triage in emergency department that uses a set of predefined rules, heuristics, to prioritize patients based on vital signs, such as heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. For instance, if a patient's blood pressure is below a certain threshold, the system flags them for immediate attention, following a simple rule-based logic rather than learning from new cases or adapting its behavior over time. Heuristics are practical rules, not machine learning algorithms. And finally, simple prediction systems. These are very basic statistical methods, such as historical averages, to make predictions. Even if they technically fall under the umbrella of machine learning, their capacity is limited and does not reach the performance level expected of AI systems. Examples include systems that forecast stock prices using simple historical averages or that predict temperature based on last week's average, or monitoring software that predicts the risk of hypoglycemia in diabetic patients based on simple statistical models without using neural network or complex machine learning algorithms. These systems make predictions but do not autonomously learn from data. In summary, the systems that are excluded from the definition of an AI system under the AI Act are systems that do not learn or reason autonomously, systems that merely improve traditional methods without going beyond basic data processing, systems that use fixed rules or heuristics without adapting to data, and systems that make very simple prediction based on basic statistics. These systems, while potentially useful in practice, lack the complexity and autonomy that characterize genuine artificial intelligence systems as defined by the AI Act. Okay, the fifth point was a tough one. Let's move on to the sixth point, which is equally fundamental. According to the definition, an AI system infers how to generate output, such as prediction, content, recommendation, or decision that can influence physical or virtual environment. AI systems differ from other software because they generate complex outputs that can modify the physical or virtual world. These outputs require advanced analytical capabilities, which are impossible for traditional software based on fixed rules. The types of outputs explicitly mentioned in the definition of an AI systems and are prediction, content, recommendation, and decisions, each of which is characterized by a different level of human involvement. Specifically, prediction are the output with the least human involvement, being estimates of unknown values based on input data. Then there is content, meaning materials generated autonomously by systems such as text, images, videos, music. They are traditional software system, a very simple example of a content creator might be, for instance, ChatGPT writing articles, or DALL-E creating images from text description. There might be also traditional software systems not based on AI that can generate content, but they do not create original content and merely combine existing elements. Next, we move on to recommendations, which are personalized suggestions based on users' data. As with content, recommendations can also be generated by traditional non-AI-based systems, but they use the static rules without advanced personalization. If the recommendations are applied automatically, they become the fourth type of output, namely decisions. Decisions are automatic choices applied without human intervention. Let's try to think of examples of the four types of AI output from the perspective of medical device. Let's take an ECG system as our example and imagine what type of prediction, content, recommendation, and decision it might generate. Starting with prediction. The system analyzes electrocardiogram data and provides the probability that the patient has a specific arrhythmia. For instance, an 85% probability of atrial fibrillation. The output is a probabilistic estimate used by the physician to support clinical decision-making. Another example could be an AI software that analyzes a chest CT scan and predicts the probability that a nodule is malignant. Moving on to content. The ECG system generates a graphical report that highlights anomalies detected in the ECG, forms with visual markers on suspicious segments. The output is a visual or structured piece of content created by the system. Or, changing device, consider an AI system that performs automatic segmentation of a brain lesion on MRI images and produce a visual map of the lesions. Now, let's move to recommendations. The ECG device suggests to the physician that additional diagnostic tests should be performed, such as echocardiogram or Holter monitoring, to further assess the condition. The output is a non-binding recommendation that guides the user. Another example might be a clinical triage AI app that analyzes symptoms entered by a patient and recommends the physician to perform an ultrasound to further investigate the suspected case of kidney stones. Finally, decisions. In an ECG system integrated with advanced clinical support features, the AI may automatically trigger an urgent alarm for a physician or clinical staff if a dangerous arrhythmia is detected, prompting immediate intervention. The output is an autonomous, executable decision with a direct impact on the patient. As another example, consider a closed-loop insulin pump that automatically decides in real time how much insulin to deliver based on the patient glucose levels. And finally, the last point, the fact that these outputs interact with the environment. What does it mean to influence physical or virtual environments? This point emphasizes that AI systems are not passive, but have an active impact on the world in which they are used. They do not merely process information, but produce results that change something, both in the real or physical and in the digital or virtual world. Let's take some examples of systems that can have an influence on physical environment. Let us consider a surgical robot guided by an AI-based algorithm capable of performing precise movements during a surgical operation. The physical environment influenced by the robot includes the surgical instruments and the patient's body. Or think about a medical device that controls the delivery of insulin in a diabetic patient by continuously monitoring blood glucose levels and automatically adjusting the insulin dose. The physical environment, the patient's body, changes because blood sugar levels are kept stable. Now let's try to think of examples of systems that can influence the virtual environment. A clinical decision support system can be represented by AI-based software that analyzes clinical data and suggests diagnosis or treatment plans to physicians. What impact does it have on the virtual environment? Well, such software modifies the flow of information and can influence clinical decisions, even though it does not act directly on the patient. Or consider a healthcare data management platform that organizes, filters, and flags anomalies in patient data collected from various medical devices. In this case, the AI modifies and manages digital data, influencing how information is displayed or used. In summary, an AI system influences the environment when its actions produce a measurable change, both in the real world and in the digital world. This point of the AI Act serves to distinguish true AI systems from simple software that merely process data without producing a concrete impact. To conclude, the guideline recalls some points which we could summarize as it follows. First, broad definition, case-by-case assessment. The definition is broad and can include various types of systems. To understand if a software falls within the AI Act's definition, you need to carefully analyze its architecture, specific functions, and consider all 7 elements of the definition. Point 2, no automatic list. It is not possible to create definitive lists or automatic mechanisms to decide which systems are AI and which are not. Each case must be evaluated individually. Point 3, not all AI systems are regulated. Only some AI systems are subject to specific rules and controls provided by the AI Act. The AI Act adopts a risk-based approach. Only systems that pose the most significant risks to fundamental rights and freedoms will be subject to, for instance, prohibition, Article 5 of the AI Act, or obligation, Article 6, and transparency requirements, Article 50. Most AI systems, even if they fall under the general definition, will not be subject to any specific regulations. Point 4, general purpose AI models. The AI Act also applies to general purpose AI models regulated in Chapter 5 of the AI Act. However, the analysis of the differences between AI systems and general purpose AI models is not covered in this guideline. In summary, the AI definition is broad, but not all systems that meet it are subject to the AI Act's rules. Regulation focuses on systems that are most risky for people's rights, and each system must be analyzed on a case-by-case basis without relying on predefined lists. Okay, now I think there is time for questions, if we have any.
Thank you, Elisa. I will support you in question. I will read you the some question, please, if you want to answer. Okay, first,
yes.
Which can be adequate standards or guidelines to be used for a medical device manufacturer to demonstrate compliance with the Artificial Intelligence Act?
Okay, standards and guidelines. Well, let's start by saying that harmonized standards, specifically for AI Act, are still under development and have not yet been officially published on the official journal of the European Union. The responsibility for preparing these standards has been assigned to the Joint Technical Committee 21, but as I said, currently no harmonized standards referenced in the official journal of the EU exist for the AI Act. In the meanwhile, manufacturers can, on one hand, refer to the already existing standards relevant to medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, such as ISO 13485 for QMS, IEC 62304, 82304-1 for software development, IEC 81001-5-1 for cybersecurity, ISO 14971 for risk management, IEC 6236661 for usability, they always stand. So they can refer to these existing standards which are relevant to medical devices and to and on the other hand, manufacturers incorporating AI into medical devices should, as a backbone, consider the main requirements of the AI Act, which, broadly speaking, refer to human oversight, technical robustness, accuracy and cybersecurity, transparency, the privacy and data governance, the post-market activities. So the pillars that should help providers may be to start with defining AI functions and clearly specify the AI model and if and how AI contributes to the device intended use. Then to ensure that the training and validation data sets are representative, reliable, and bias-free. Then to demonstrate the accuracy, reliability, and reproducibility of the AI system, also specifying possible risks related to AI, including cybersecurity and algorithm bias, and then establishing robust mechanism for monitoring AI performance and implementing updates safely. To do that, and to try to answer to your question, there are standards that can help in these activities, and they include the ISO 22989 that focuses on AI concepts and terminology to start. Then there is the AAMI 34971, which provides guidance on AI risk management in medical technology. It addresses the same types of risks that are addressed in ISO 14971, but focuses on risks that might emerge or increase when evaluating medical technology using machine learning. And the ISO 5259 family, it is an entire family which covers standards for data quality in AI system.
Okay, thank you. Second, what are the main aspects that the notified bodies will focus on during the technical documentation assessment in the evaluation of companies and products that use artificial intelligence?
Okay, notified body assessment. All right, let's start from the fact that manufacturers of medical devices integrating AI-based technologies will need to ensure their products comply with the requirement of the AI Act by 2027. The good news is that the MDR and IR regulations on one hand and the AI Act on the other hand partially overlap. Specifically, they share requirements related to the existence of a risk management system, of a quality management system, the need for technical documentation draft according to well-defined guidelines that assess the accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity of the device. They also require the manufacturer, I use the general term manufacturer, even though we know that it only applies to MDR and IVDR, whereas for the AI Act, we should speak of provider. Anyway, they require the manufacturer to provide appropriate instruction for you to the end user to be able to undertake corrective action in a structured manner and to have a post-market data management process in place. These are all activities required by both MDR, IVDR, and the AI Act, though with obvious different levels of details. What the AI Act adds, however, are requirements due to the new type of technology involved. Therefore, The AI Act includes articles specifically dedicated to topics such as transparency, data governance, record maintenance, and human oversight. Let's keep this concept in mind. On one hand, the manufacturer will have to adapt what has already been done for MDR to meet the AI Act requirements. And on the other hand, add responses to new requirements. This links to the previous question answers because the notified body for MDR and IVDR expects the manufacturer to have prepared technical documentation that addresses the new requirements, namely requirements related to transparency, data governance, data quality, record keeping, and new risks associated with the AI-based technology. To do this, manufacturer can currently rely on the standards we mentioned earlier. It is also worth noting the publication by the notified body team of a position paper titled Questionnaire Artificial Intelligence in Medical Devices, which is publicly available. While we wait for the publication of harmonized standard, this document guides manufacturers in preparing the technical file and notified bodies in evaluating it. So I would suggest the manufacturer to rely on that document.
Okay, thank you. Third, a medical device software that includes artificial intelligence systems can comply only with European Union MDR, or is also required a certification under the Artificial Intelligence Act?
Well, this is well explained in the Act itself because it explains how the conformity assessment procedure according to the AI Act shall be performed. And the AI Act, this links with the previous question. We are not requiring the AI Act. Does not require the providers to start from scratch. So the AI Act itself explains that manufacturer of devices that are already covered by other legislation, and the other legislations include the MDR and the IVDR, so all the legislation listed in the Annex 1 of the AI Act, can start from the work they have done for being compliant with that legislation, start from that technical documentation and add the gap. So in particular, it is stated that it's not required to have a dedicated declaration of conformity. You can update the declaration of conformity you have drafted and prepared for the MDR. So the two goes hand in hand. It is not something made from scratch for the AI Act. So for medical device in particular, the conformity assessment is explained in, let's say, hand in hand with the conformity assessment performed for the MDR.
Okay. If a large language model, LLM-based system is used to support decision-making, but the final clinical decision is always made and validated by a physician, does it still need to be certified as a medical device under MDR regulations? How do regulators currently interpret the boundary between a clinical decision support tool and a certifiable medical device in the context of artificial intelligence?
Wow, this is very long. We start from the first part because otherwise I will forget the two parts. So first part, which is an LLM model for which the clinician, can you just repeat it? Just the first part, please.
Okay.
I will write down notes while you're writing it, while you're reading it. Otherwise, I will.
Okay. If a large language model-based system is used to support decision making, but the final clinical decision is always made and validated by a physician, does it still need to be certified as a medical device under MDR regulation?
Okay, stop here. First part.
Yes.
It depends to the intended purpose and okay, let's go back to what we said about objectives. If you remember, we're dealing about objectives. We said that there is a difference between the intended purpose and the implicit and explicit objectives inside the device, and that this difference shall be well explained and detailed by the manufacturer. So, first point, let the assessor understand if the intended purpose of your device is influenced by the LLM model. So, are you using it with an impact to the intended purpose of your device? If the answer is no, then okay, this is one path. We are not. It is not part of the intended purpose of the device. If the LLM model you have implemented does have an impact on the intended purpose of the device, then you should assess it according to the AI Act definition. So, understand if it is an AI system we have seen today, understand if it is a high-risk AI system, but the first point, does it have to be covered by the MDR? Well, is it part of the medical device? Because if you are using it as a, I don't know, as a chatbot that is a different device from the main device, then it is not the medical device itself. But it's difficult for me to try to imagine a medical device for which you have prepared this LLM model that suggests a diagnosis or a decision and that it is not part of the medical device. I suppose you are developing it for an intended purpose to speed up the diagnosis. I don't know that. So it shall have an intended medical purpose. If so, it shall be covered by the MDR as well. And then there was a second part which was quite long. So again.
Yes. Wait a moment. Okay. How do regulators currently interpret the boundary between a clinical decision support tool and a certifiable medical device in the context of artificial intelligence?
Oh, okay. The regulators. True answers, I don't know. Currently, the implementation and the let's say it better. As I explained at the beginning of the webinar, guidelines are being published to help providers to interpret what is written in the AI Act. So the one we discussed about today, the guideline for AI system definition, was not the first, will not be the last one. It is part of the list of guidelines that are going to be published. So probably there will be, for sure, there will be other guidelines that will help explains difference, like the one you were mentioning, the boundary between a support system and a medical device itself with AI capabilities. So if you ask me for the interpretation of regulators, I think that my answer for now is I don't know.
Okay. let's go through. Is autonomy in artificial intelligence systems solely determined by the nature of their output? Example, predictions, recommendation, decisions. Or does it also encompass the autonomy present during the training and inference stages?
Okay.
Then I will read all. Wait a moment, Eli. Simple models like those using moving average for stock values can infer without autonomously learning how to infer an output, suggesting autonomy isn't limited to the outcome or even just inference.
Okay, so let's go back to the definition and see if I got completely your question.
Okay.
Okay. So the autonomy is something that is always required by the AI system to generate its output. As we have said and seen, there might be systems that are able to generate output, but they are very simple output. So what is mandatory in the definition is the fact that the system shall be autonomous, not necessarily 100% autonomous, but shall have some degree of autonomy, and the ability to infer. Autonomy and infer to generate output. So this definition is not taking into account the training, the validation, what has happened to build the model. It is just saying that the model you have now that operates to generate output shall be autonomous in some levels and shall be able to infer from the input how to generate outputs. Then in case adaptiveness and everything else. I hope I was able to understand it was again a quite long question to understand it and to give the answer, but the definition does not take into account what happened before. So the training, the validation, the testing done to prepare and to have this AI system ready and working. Now the AI system, to be an AI system, shall be autonomous and shall be able to infer, to generate output.
Okay. What if a medical device uses a continuous learning model? I mean, if model version 1 is validated, but the model continues to learn, should we revalidate it or validate it continuously?
Okay. Well, it is the difference between those systems that still change and learns and those that don't change. So the concept of adaptiveness. You don't have to exhibit adaptiveness, but you can. In this question, the system definitely has adaptiveness and behave for its validation. The most complete answer I would suggest to refer to is probably in the standard, the AAMI standard, the 34971, the one about risk management, because the approach shall, as always, be a risk-based approach. the standard we mentioned is not just, in dealing with risks, and if you have a continuous learning system, you should take into account the risks that might emerge from having outputs that are different from the outputs it used to have when you first launched it. So the standard in dealing with risks makes also example of the environment in which the system is used. So you not only have a software that changes its behavior, but even if it doesn't change its behavior, the environment in which it operates might change over the time. So if you are able to understand how it changes and how the environment changes, you should take into account all the risks arising from these different inputs, let's say, and to take them into account for validating the software itself, the device itself.
Okay, thank you. All artificial intelligence solutions embedded in a medical system are by default high risk, or the high risk definition of Artificial Intelligence Act has to reclassified in terms of MDR, MDCG software, having a different classifiers?
Okay, so just the initial part of the question, please, Eleonora. All the AI
solutions embedded in a medical device system are by default high risk, or the high risk?
Okay. No. So the definition of high risk AI system, which is provided in Article 6 of the AI Act, requires that the AI system is both is either let me read it. Sorry, I have a moment of blackout for the definition of AI systems. So Article 6, here it is. And both the requirements shall be true, and they are, 6, okay. Safety component, I was missing that phrase. An AI system is intended to be used as a safety component of a product, or the AI system is itself a product covered by the Union Harmonization legislation listed in Article 1. This is the first part. So we are dealing with medical device and in vitro diagnostics. So covered by the Union Harmonization legislation listed in Article 1 in Annex 1 means MDR or IVDR. So first point, it means that the AI system is intended to be used as a safety component of an MDR product or IVDR product, or the AI system is itself an MDR or IVDR product, first part. And the second part, the product is required to undergo a third-party conformity assessment. So it is not a class 1 medical device. So only those AI systems integrated in a medical device that are safety component of the product, or that are the medical device itself and not a class 1, are high-risk AI system. All the other possible AI systems that might be integrated in a medical device but that are not safety component of a medical device are not high-risk AI system. And then I don't remember the second part of the question.
Okay. Risk. Or the high-risk definition of Artificial Intelligence Act has to reclassified in terms of MDR, MDCG software having a different classifiers?
I think we have already answered to what we have said
okay.
so far. So only if both applies.
Okay.
And you can have, okay, sorry.
Okay. Are predetermined change control plans to be submitted to the notified body as part of documents to cover the post-market activities lifecycle management?
Predetermined, sorry, the first part.
Predetermined change control plans to be submitted to the notified body as part of document to cover the post-market activities?
I would rely on the requirements of the AI Act for post-market surveillance. Of course, you shall have a focus on topics that were not necessary before as far as post-market surveillance are concerned. There are predetermined change control plans that shall be submitted. I think that this is if the question was, are there any predetermined change control plan to be submitted? Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay. Okay. If I update my artificial intelligence model over time, example, to improve performance, without changing the model's architecture, without changing the model's architecture, am I required to do a major revision of the technical documentation? Or does it fall under minor, non-significant change?
It depends on what you do to increase your performance. The first part is I am changing the performance of the medical device, right?
For example, yes. If I update my model over time, example, to improve performance.
Okay, so what characterizes in artificial intelligence in terms of capabilities is, among other parameters and features, the performance you declare. So you declare that your model reaches 90% of sensitivity, I don't know. So you are changing the model to reach different parameters. So probably you have changed, I don't know, something in the model to increase its performance. As I said, let's go to one of the latest. I don't remember if it was the last one. It is important that not only the architecture is defined and described by the manufacturer, but also the performance declared and reached by the, here it is, by the manufacturer. So here the sentence was related to the definition of the AI system to determine whether a software system is an AI system. And this decision is based not only on the architecture, which the person who asked the question said it was not being changed, but also to functionalities and to performance and to performance. So if you changed it, it might be changed because of something that triggers a major change. It is difficult to answer without a context. So the quite common answer is try to justify what you've said and consider the definition of significance according also to the MDR guidance. So take the change that you have implemented, try to explain it, and follow the state-of-the-art guideline to understand whether it is significant or not, regardless of the change having an impact on the architecture.
Okay. Another, could you please repeat the ISO and standards that you have just addressed?
Yeah, there is the one for the, I think they are talking about the one for the risk, which is not an ISO actually, is an AAMI. It is the 34971. It is like the ISO 14971 for risk, but with a 3 instead of the 1. And then there is the ISO 22989 for terminology. It is a quite high-level one. And then the family, the ISO 5259. There are many standards, it is indeed the family. And these are for data quality. So this is very important to help providers and deployers demonstrating that the data they are using for training, validation, testing are quality data. And this is really fundamental, since the core of AI system is data. So if you're using your own data for a standard medical device, you will probably have prepared that data by yourself for your medical device, and you have all the reasons to prepare good data for yourself. But for training an AI system, probably you are using available data sets, and you don't know if the quality of those data sets is good enough for what you are going to do. So this family of standards really help you in determining the quality of data you are using.
Okay, maybe we can stop the question. Maybe, Elisa, can we leave one moment the last
Yes, of course.
screen in which we have our contact? Please, if you need our services, write to our email. And for now, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.